Today we have the privilege of hearing from another candidate for the U.S. Senate, former Texas Solicitor General Ted Cruz. On January 19th, Mr. Cruz filed to run for the U.S. Senate based on the need for new leadership and his proven record of fighting for conservative principles and winning on a national level. Ted has served for 5.5 years as the Solicitor General of Texas, chief lawyer before the United States Supreme Court. Ted has authored over 80 U.S. Supreme Court briefs and personally argued 39 oral arguments, including 9 before the Supreme Court, the most of any lawyer in Texas. He has been described by National Review magazine as a star rising in Texas and a great Reaganite hope. And he has earned national recognition as a passionate and effective defender of liberty and the Constitution. Please join me in welcoming someone you're going to hear a lot about in the future, Ted Cruz.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you this evening. Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be in Tarrant County. You know, I don't know how many of y'all saw, and I'm going to skip this microphone, I don't know how many of y'all saw this past week that the inventor of the teleprompter passed away. It's a true story. He was 92 years old. He passed away this past week. I understand that when President Obama was informed of this, he was speechless. I got to admit, it's hard to resist a teleprompter. It is great to be with you. What I want to very briefly do is tell you 3 things. Why I'm running, why I believe we're going to win, and how you can help. And then I want to address the 5 questions that you're asking every candidate, and I love the questions, by the way. Let's start with why I'm running. America's at a crossroads, a fundamental divide. This president, Barack Obama, is the most radical president this nation has ever seen. He is a true believer in government. Government is the solution for every problem. Government is the answer to every want and need in your life. And yet, at the same time, I am incredibly optimistic because as radical as this president is, he has sparked a great awakening all across Texas and all across the country. Millions of Americans are standing up to preserve our nation. I'm convinced we are facing the epic battle of our generation. Quite literally, do we remain a free market nation? In my opinion, this race for U.S. Senate, the Republican primary, is going to come down to one question. Which candidate is best prepared to stand up and fight to stop the Obama agenda? Millions of Americans in the Tea Party and outside the Tea Party are standing up to defend individual liberty, to defend free market principles, and to defend the U.S. Constitution. And that's exactly why I'm running. You know, I'll tell you a little bit of my personal background because it provides a lot of my motivation for running. My dad is from Cuba. Was born in Cuba, grew up in Cuba. As a kid, he fought in the Cuban Revolution. He was thrown in prison and he was tortured as a teenager. My grandfather found him in prison, bribed his way out of prison, and he fled Cuba. He came to the United States in 1957 to attend the University of Texas. He was 18 years old and he didn't speak a word of English. He had no possessions, but he had $100 sewn into his underwear. And he went and got a job as a dishwasher making 50 cents an hour. And he worked full time, he paid his way through school, he got a job, he started a business. He worked towards the American dream. Now my dad has been my hero my whole life, but when I was a kid, my father used to say to me all the time, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? And I'll tell you, there's no question that better explains why I'm running for the U.S. Senate than that question. We are facing a threat to our liberty that the American people are rising up, and we need leadership to stand and fight to preserve our liberty. That's number 1, why I'm running. Number 2, why it is I believe we're going to win. We're running program based on two very simple themes. There are a number of other candidates in the race, but the two themes we're running on, I believe, will provide a clear, decisive message in this race and a clear winner. Number one, new leadership. The 2010 cycle showed Americans are tired of the same incumbent establishment leadership in the Republican Party that doesn't believe it, that doesn't have any core principles. A big part of the reason Barack Obama got elected is Republicans failed to lead. And we're tired of leaders that are just reading for them to talking points, that don't have the fire in the belly, that aren't prepared to fight to defend limited government, free market principles, and individualism. 2010, all over the country, from Marco Rubio in Florida, to Rand Paul in Kentucky, to Mike Lee in Utah, to Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, all over the country, Americans said, we want new leaders that will stand and fight for the Constitution. That's the first theme I'm running. The second theme I'm running on is a proven conservative record. All of us are frustrated with candidates that keep coming and telling us what we want to hear. It's very easy to stand in front of a group of Texans and tell you what you want to hear. I can promise you, you will not see a single Republican candidate come tell you, I am a tax and spend big government liberal. They're not stupid, so they're not going to say that. My view, it's actually a question Johnny asked, which I think was a great question. Not, what do you say, what have you done? I'm going to suggest to you a simple test to compare every candidate in this race. Devote 20 minutes to the U.S. Senate race. Go home to your computer, go to the websites of each of the candidates in this race, and pull out a notepad and write down for each candidate what are the 5 most significant things that candidate has accomplished for conservative principles. Not what do they say. They can all give great speeches. What have they done? What I'm going to suggest to you is if you do that, if you go and ask that question, the comparison of the candidates is going to be pretty stark. I served 5.5 years as the Solicitor General of Texas, the chief lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Over and over again, Texas led the nation defending conservative principles. We defended the Ten Commandments monument. We went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won 5-4. We defended the Pledge of Allegiance. We went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won unanimously. We stood up to the World Court and the United Nations. We defended U.S. sovereignty, and we won 6-3. And we defended the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. We went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won 5-4. The question each of us should ask of every candidate is not, what can you say? It's, show me. What is your proven record? If you're really a conservative, you shouldn't have to tell people. Because you will have been in the foxholes and you will bear the stripes from standing and fighting for your principles. The third and final thing I want to share with each of you is how you can help. If you like what you hear, in the Q&A, I would ask you to do 4 things. Number 1, go to the website tedcruz.org and sign up online. tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. You can also, we have brochures and sign-up cards there. You can sign up via snail mail and paper as well. Number 2, join us on Facebook. We are building a conservative coalition across Texas and nationally. I am humbled to tell you on Facebook, the other 4 candidates in this race have between 1,000 and 8,000 supporters on Facebook. We have over 58,000. We have more supporters on Facebook than any statewide official in Texas. And the reason is simple. People are hungry for leadership to stand up and fight the Obama agenda and to defend free market principles. The third thing I would ask you to do is to make a contribution. If you can make a substantial one, wonderful. If not, it's an amazing thing if you give $10, $25, $50. You're invested in it. It changes how you interact with your friends and neighbors. You will bring up the race more. You have skin in the game. And it's a remarkable thing if you make a contribution, how it will alter all of your conversations with your friends and neighbors. There are forms there also if you want to contribute here. And I'm pleased to tell you in the first 10 weeks of the campaign, we raised over $1 million. We raised over $100,000 a week, and it came from over 1,100 contributions from 122 Texas cities and from 37 states all over the country. 70% of the money we raised came in online. It is very much a grassroots Tea Party conservative coalition, and that's how we're going to win the race. The fourth and final thing I would ask you to do is find 5 friends to do the same. How did we build 58,000 supporters on Facebook? Because we've had a viral effort of individuals saying to their friends, saying to their neighbors, saying to the family, I know this guy. This race matters. This isn't just some other politician passing the tin cup. This is someone who believes in our principles and is prepared to fight for them and save this country. Thank you for having me here, and I look forward to answering questions.
I think I can be loud enough too. I just want to remind everybody we've only allocated 15 minutes. We will not take questions from the group tonight, and if we don't have time for all of these questions, we have to stop when the time is up. The first is on national sovereignty. Many refer to our surrender of our national sovereignty to the UN as a significant step toward the establishment of one world order. How can we continue to be a part of the UN and not lose our national sovereignty?
Thank you for that question, Fran. And let me say, you're going to notice a pattern in answer to every question. Every other candidate is going to give you the conservative answer, because they all have consultants and they're all told this is the right answer on every question. Every answer I give is going to say yes, and here's my record. So yes, I strongly support protecting U.S. sovereignty, and here's my record. Let me talk to you about the case of Medellin versus Texas. Medellin is a case that arose in Houston where 2 teenage girls were gang raped and murdered. It's a horrible crime in Houston. In that case, the World Court, which is the judicial arm of the United Nations, issued an order to the United States to reopen the convictions of 51 murderers across this country. It's the first time in the history of our nation a foreign court has tried to bind the U.S. justice system. Texas stood up and fought the World Court. I had the honor of arguing this case twice in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. On the other side were over 90 nations, all of whom came in against us, arguing that the U.S. justice system should be totally subservient to the World Court and the United Nations. And also on the other side was the President of the United States, who signed a 2-paragraph order that attempted to order the state courts to obey the World Court. Texas stood up, we fought the World Court, we fought the United Nations, we fought 90 foreign nations, and we fought the President of the United States. We defended U.S. sovereignty, and we won 6-3. And I will tell you briefly, this is a fight that keeps going. One of our chief antagonists was the Dean of Yale Law School, who is now the chief legal advisor in Barack Obama's State Department. Our sovereignty is under assault, and we need a senator who will stand and fight to defend it.
Okay, immigration. The U.S. has a long history of welcoming immigrants from all over the world. Such a policy has made a significant contribution to our economy and gives us an ethnically diverse demographic. However, because of the size and complexity, our borders are very difficult to control. Do you consider illegal immigration to be a significant issue today? And if so, how would you attempt to solve it?
Another terrific question. Absolutely. My position on immigration is simple. I strongly oppose illegal immigration. I categorically oppose amnesty. And I strongly support legal immigrants. With respect to illegal immigration, I approach this from the perspective of someone who spent most of his adult life in law enforcement. It makes no sense that we don't know who is coming into this border. In a post 9/11 world, we don't know their criminal backgrounds, we don't know where they're coming from. It is lunacy that our borders are wide open. Neither party is serious about this issue, and we need to shut down the border, period, the end. I support using every law enforcement tool at our disposal. I support fences, I support walls, I support manpower, I support technology, I support cards, social security cards that can't just be copied on a Xerox machine. I support getting serious and shutting down illegal immigration. Now, I also think we need to remain a nation that welcomes legal immigrants who follow the rules, who follow the laws, who come here legally, and who are, as Ronald Reagan put them, Americans by choice. That is part of our history, and I think the two are entirely consistent. And I'll tell you, look, as a Hispanic, most of the Hispanic community doesn't support illegal immigration. Because most of the Hispanic community that is here, that is legally participating, followed the rules, often waited decades to come here. And so I think as a matter of law enforcement, we've got to shut down the border.
Okay, on the budget.
Excuse me, could you please use the microphone? We can hear over here.
Are we still on? Okay, on the budget. The U.S. is over $14 trillion in debt, continuing to increase every day. Paul Ryan has unveiled his budget, The Road to Prosperity. Do you support or oppose this plan, and why? Do you want the microphone? He's fine.
For granted, it's a terrible thing. I'm a lawyer and a political candidate. I can make my voice heard. As my wife points out to me with some frequency. Paul Ryan is a friend. I respect him. I admire him. Do I support his plan? Yes. More fundamentally, I support any plan that significantly reduces the size, power, and spending of the federal government. We are facing a crisis in this country. You know, it was interesting. 3 weeks ago, we had the vote on the continuing resolution, the, quote, $38 billion budget deal. And you have to put it in quotes because we discovered later it was all accounting tricks and smoke and mirrors. Politico asked every Republican Senate candidate in the country, how would you vote on the CR? I thought the question was very simple. I said I would unequivocally vote no, even assuming the $38 billion was real, it wasn't accounting tricks. Our current annual deficit this year is over $1.6 trillion. $38 billion is less than 3% of that. That is not a serious response to an absolute impending fiscal and economic crisis we have in this country. What's interesting is every Republican Senate candidate in the country said they would vote no, with 2 exceptions. And the only 2 Republican Senate candidates in the entire nation who said they would vote for the $38 billion budget deal are 2 of my 4 opponents in this race. Railroad Commissioner Elizabeth Ames Jones and former Dallas Mayor Tom Leppert both said they would proudly vote for the $38 billion CR. That's a policy differential. In my opinion, we need strong, real leadership now, and part of it fundamentally has to include entitlement reform. And that's something I'm campaigning on now. I'm campaigning openly on now. It used to be conventional wisdom. You can't be an adult in politics. You can't talk about the realities of the economy and our budget. Instead, what you have to do is go buy off votes. I don't agree with it. And I don't agree with it in large part because of what each of you are doing in this room. I think the Tea Party movement across the country, I think America is ready for serious leadership to dramatically shrink the size, power, and spending of the federal government. And I will tell you, there is no member of the U.S. Senate, bar none, who will be more vigorous and more systematic and strategic in shrinking the size and power of the federal government. I will fight for that every hour of every day I'm in the U.S. Senate.
Which is a great segue to our next question about the size of the federal government. Constitutional scholars seem to argue over the scope of the Constitution of the United States. Proponents of big government cite the General Welfare Clause as the constitutional authority allowing the federal government to legislate any and all activity it feels will improve the general welfare. Does the Constitution of the U.S. truly grant unlimited authority to the federal government, as many argue, and if not, why?
Another fabulous. I love all 5 of your questions, because your questions are what I'm running on. Absolutely not is the simple answer to that question. Does the federal government have unlimited power? I will tell you, if there's one thing I am probably best known for nationally in my tenure as Solicitor General, it is being one of the leading defenders in the country of shrinking the size, power, and authority and spending of the federal government. For all of 2010, I led the Center for 10th Amendment Studies for the Texas Public Policy Foundation. where we developed a national strategy that has been picked up by free market think tanks and conservative legislators all across the country, a national strategy to repeal Obamacare, to attack the federal government's power, to shrink the federal government's power, to pass a balanced budget amendment. It's a strategy, and you can go look at lengthy reports that I wrote detailing how the U.S. Supreme Court has dramatically expanded the power of the federal government, much to the detriment of the liberty of the people, and laying out a strategy of how the people can stand up and fight to recapture our liberty. And I'll tell you, going back to a proven record, let's actually do the last two questions. On immigration, when I was Solicitor General, I led a coalition of states before the U.S. Supreme Court, urging the Supreme Court to impose the strictest criminal penalties on aggregated felons who illegally enter this country. And on this question, on the power of the federal government, I led a coalition of states before the U.S. Supreme Court defending property rights and urging the Supreme Court to strike down the Endangered Species Act as applied to an arroyo toad, and it was being used, who lived in California. And our argument was the toad is in California, it doesn't cross state lines, that's not interstate commerce, and the federal government has no power to regulate a toad in the middle of the desert in California. So not only do I share your principles, but I have a proven record on it, and no other candidate in the race has a record on these issues.
Okay, and our last question is regarding the right to bear arms. Please explain your position on our right to bear arms and how you will fight against the anti-gun law.
Another fantastic question, and I'll make a broader point on this. If you go to any candidate's website, they always have an issues page. And there are a series of issues, A, B, C, D, and E. And every one of them has word for word the identical answer. If it weren't so serious, it'd be funny. But they literally pair the exact same script. And the truth of the matter is, any political consultant worth 2 nickels can tell you on A, this is what you say, on B, this is what you say, on C, this is what you say. So, for example, on the Second Amendment, every single Republican candidate will say, I support the Second Amendment. Unless you are clinically insane. In the state of Texas, that is the right answer. Even the Democrats will say, that's the right answer. Now, if you go to my website, tedcruz.org, you'll very quickly notice I don't have an issues page. It's not there. What I have is a page that's labeled a proven record. And what it says is, for too long, politicians have said one thing and done another. You shall know them by their deeds. Every one of us should ask any candidate who shows up in front of us, you say you believe these principles. Show them. When have you stood up and fought for them? When have you bled for them? And what have you done? And what the website then says is, for the past decade, Ted has been fighting for conservative principles over and over and over again, and winning on a national level. Colon. And then there are 3 pages of bullet points just laying out my record. And it's actually a principle. When I worked at the Justice Department, my boss then was John Ashcroft. And Ashcroft used to say, if I'm ever accused of being a Christian, I'd like for there to be enough evidence to convict him. That principle is exactly right, and it's equally true of being a conservative. Now, on the Second Amendment, I actually don't say I support the Second Amendment on my website. I do, but I don't say it on the website. I don't say a word about what's hidden in the deep recesses of my heart. What I do say is that as the Solicitor General of Texas, I brought together 31 states before the U.S. Supreme Court in the D.C. gun case in defense of the individual right to keep and bear arms. And we won a landmark victory protecting the individual right to keep and bear arms. And then I linked to a resolution from the National Board of the NRA thanking me by name for helping lead the fight to defend the Second Amendment, and awarding me in 2010 their Carter Knight Freedom Fund Award for being the leading Second Amendment defender in the country protecting our liberties. That's the difference between a candidate simply saying, sure, I support the Second Amendment. And if you really support the Second Amendment, what gunfights have you been? And I will say in closing, thank you for having me here. I appreciate your having me here. I will tell you, there are some candidates in this race, either in the race who may get in the race, who have mountains of money. Literally, I mean, not figuratively, I mean mountains in their backyard. They have the ability to self-finance spectacular. But you know, 2010 showed money can't buy a race. The reason fundamentally I'm convinced we're going to win this race is because the people are hungry for principled conservative leadership with a real record. I'm honored to tell you I was endorsed a month ago by Mike Lee, the new senator from Utah. It was the first endorsement Mike made, and what he said is, we need 10 in the Senate to help lead this fight and to help us win. And Mike's race, he also pointed out, 2010 showed money and the establishment are not what they need. I am here because I need your support. The only way I can win is if the men and women in this room fight alongside me and we retake our country. And I will make a promise to you. If I go to the U.S. Senate and I simply vote right 100% of the time, I will consider myself an abject failure. And I'm asking you right now to hold me accountable. Because my intention in going there is not just to vote right. What we desperately need is leadership. And if I am not standing in front, helping lead the fight to stop the Obama agenda and to shrink the size, power, and spending of the federal government, if I don't have arrows up and down my torso, I won't be doing my job. And I have asked Tea Party leaders and conservative activists throughout the state, hold me accountable if I'm not doing exactly that. What there is, President Obama is tremendously effective defending government control of the economy in our lives. There is a screaming void of leadership on the other side, defending free market principles. We have a movement from the people that is rising up and a leadership vacuum. A question I ask people all the time, how many people in national politics right now are smiling? How many people are standing up, fighting for free market principles and effectively taking the field of debate to stop Obama? I've yet to find someone who can count more fingers than they have in one hand. That's why I'm running to help lead this fight. I need your help. I need your support. Please take a brochure. Please sign up. Please join us.